course, whether a car looks beautiful or hideous is always subjective, but you can't argue that some cars aren't as good looking as others. Car companies always ask their designers to make radical and flashy cars. Sometimes it works, but sometimes it doesn't. Here's a list of the top 10 ugliest cars of all time. Number 10. The VW Thing. The VW Thing is just what the name says. It's a thing. There isn't much too special about it outside of this incredibly odd design. You've got a windshield that folds down. I mean, you can do so much weird shit with this car. It's pretty cool, but at the end of the day, does it really look that good? I don't think so. Number 9, the Isuzu VehiCROSS. The VehiCROSS was supposed to be a Jeep for Isuzu in a way, and it failed quite miserably. It was only in production for a few short years, and its massive body cladding or plastic around pretty much the entire lower half of the car was quite hideous. Its two-door design and high initial price tag is probably part of the reason why this failed outside of its looks. Put some fat tires on it, however, and you do have one strange-looking off-roader. Number 8, the Pontiac Transport. Outside of the terrible wordplay on the name itself, the Transport might be the ugliest minivan of all time. Granted, not many minivans are attractive, but you know what I mean. The Transport features two different sets of taillights, which is just completely hideous, some ugly wheels, and a quite ugly front end as well. The design all around was trying to be too futuristic in my mind. It kind of looks like Tesla took a play out of Pontiac's book here with their windshield on the Model X, but the Transport certainly does not live up to the expectation that the Model X does. Number 7, the Citroën Ami. The Ami, as I'm going to call it, even if that's incorrect, was produced a few decades ago and was quite hideous for its time. While the front end of the car really isn't all that bad, it's the back where things really get interesting. It almost looks like a truck in the back, with body lines coming back in the opposite direction, making the car's design even stranger. The color options and combinations for this were not very attractive as well, adding even more reason why this car should be on this list. Number 6, the Nissan S-Cargo. Possibly the most pointless transport van or utility van of all time. Not only is it absolutely tiny, it's quite hideous. It almost looks like an oversized VW Beetle with its rounded out top, but even more hideous than that. It has two separate windows, one of which only goes down on each door, and a very strange front end and rear end too. The body lines and proportions of the S-Cargo just add even more question marks to why Nissan would make something like this, but if you saw something like this driving down the road, you'd probably turn and stare. Number 5, the Sebring Vanguard City Car. Basically the Tesla before Teslas. During the oil crisis, Sebring Vanguard came out with this electric-powered triangle and pushed it for sale. Unfortunately, the oil crisis eventually ended and no one wanted an electric car, so it failed pretty miserably. I think looks are definitely part of the reason to blame here, as it looks like a tin can triangle. The skittled colored paint and tiny size didn't help either. Number 4, the Nissan Juke, possibly one of the ugliest cars in production today. The Juke has always struck me as an unattractive car. It has two separate headlight housings on the front. The rear really isn't that bad, in all honesty, but its proportions are a bit off, and it's technically considered a station wagon even though it looks like a small crossover. It fits into a weird class, and I'm surprised that Nissan is still making it to this day. Number 3, the Mitsuoka, that. This Chinese Poss almost looks like a knockoff Bentley. I'm not sure what they were trying to do here with the 3 different headlights, but the proportions just look all off. When you take a car with a short wheelbase and try to lengthen it over the wheels, it just makes it look worse. The overhang on the front and rear bumper is terrible, and the 3 headlight design and terrible taillight design, as well as some ugly styling elsewhere, just adds to the clusterfuck that this car is. Number 2, the Pontiac Aztek. Did you honestly think we'd get through this list without seeing the Aztek? The Aztek is known as probably the most ugly modern car to be made. Granted, it's no longer in production, but every time you see one, you just kind of have to stop and think, really, Pontiac? What were you thinking? The cladding around the bottom half of the car, ugly rear end design and front fascia, and weird proportions just kind of add to the question mark that is the Aztek. Number 1, the Fiat Multipla. In my mind, this is the ugliest car ever made, and thankfully it was not sold in America. If you've ever seen the old Top Gear, you might remember them doing a skit with this car and completely destroying it and turning it into an old people's car. That was quite funny, and it really drew me to dislike the looks of this car. Even from factory, it's a quite hideous car with a set of headlights right below the windshield for whatever reason, as well as a Fiat badge there too. It's almost like they forgot to put it on the hood and just said, well, we've got this empty piece of metal right here below the windshield, let's stick it here. Around back, the car doesn't get much better, and the side profile is pretty hideous too. So there you have it, the top 10 ugliest cars of all time. What other cars would you like to see added to this list? Leave them down below in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a big thumbs up, and thanks for watching.
Keep going. There you go, you idiot!